Welcome to episode 7 of Talkin with Turpin. Today I'm really excited to have a couple special guests with me, Part Ginder and Jennifer Ledger from Grow Allen. And we'll kind of share with you today a little bit of a vision for Allen County that we have. In 2023, before I became commissioner, I was a member of the East Allen County School Board. And on that, I saw a lot of our students who graduated that really had no career pathway, that they were graduating from high school and really weren't sure what they were going to do. I also was an adjunct professor at Taylor University and saw a number of juniors and seniors that getting ready to finish a 4-year degree in college and had no idea what they were going to do. So they had spent the last 4 years spending a lot of money on a degree and just didn't have a basis for that. So as I talked with other members of the school board, talked to our superintendent, the other superintendents throughout Allen County, which Park at the time was one of those superintendents, found out this is a common issue with a lot of our young people, that they just really, they've been told, graduate from high school, go to college, but they've not really had anything beyond that. So at the time, I was an executive at Ambassador Enterprises. We had decided to make an initiative on really answering a question. What would it look like if every student in Allen County, public school, private school, homeschool, graduated high school knowing what they wanted to do, how to get there, what the tools were for success, and then had the tools to have a success as an adult? What would that look like if we did that? It'd be a game changer for us, because today we know that less than 50% of children have that. And so out of all that, we convened a group of the 4 superintendents in Allen County schools, as well as other stakeholders, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, over the journey of 6-8 months to come up with what does this look like. And out of that came a dream for an organization called Grow Allen. Now, none of us were really excited about forming another nonprofit. However, there was nothing else we found that could be a convener that could bring different parties together to help answer this question. Grow Allen's not doing the work. However, they are bringing the parties together to get the work done. And so another aha for us came in that we were focused at the time on K through 12. So how do we get young people in grade school thinking about careers? Because right now our model is, you're a junior in high school, now it's time to think about career. Well, we need to think way before that of what that is. But then we also had an aha in this, in that how many of our children come into kindergarten not ready to learn? We have a crisis in our community, in the state, of our children who just don't have the tools to be successful when they start school. And because of that, they're going to be behind through their entire career. In addition, in Allen County, we have some of the highest rates of prenatal issues, as well as deaths of babies, as well as deaths of mothers. And so how do we address those as well? So really we saw a spectrum from everything from prenatal care all the way through high school graduation that was part of this. So we formed Grow Allen, and one of the people that was a party to that was Dr. Ginder, who at the time was superintendent of Southwest Allen Schools. And as we were trying to decide who would our executive director be, who would give us credibility in kind of that education space, but also kind of put the business community with that, Park stood up and said, I think I'd be interested in that. So he'll tell you a little bit of his story and how he got here. And then we were excited to have several months later, Jennifer joined us in that early learning space to help kind of be a voice for that. So she'll share her story as well. But super excited to have them both here with us today, because the issues that we're talking about are critical to the success of this region long term. And those issues are becoming more and more prevalent as we go along. In my role as commissioner today, I talk to businesses all the time that are looking for strong leaders in their business communities, talking to our superintendents all the time that are looking for more opportunities for their students to learn about the business community. And we have more and more of our early learning providers that are going out of business right now. And we're coming into a crisis where those working parents that are looking for good quality early learning opportunities, those are getting scarcer and scarcer. So Jennifer will talk about that as well. So I'm excited to have this conversation today. I think there's a lot of misinformation that people hear when they hear about some of these topics. And so happy to kind of be addressing that today. And what I see is Allen County is really on the forefront of helping address a lot of these issues that every county in this state is seeing right now. So Park and Jennifer, happy to have you with us today. I've done a lot of talking, but now we'll let you guys talk. So Park, we'll kind of start with you about a little bit of your background and what brought you to Grow Out and what you're working on.
Great. I started my career as an art, photography, and computer graphics teacher. I'm old enough that computer graphics didn't really even exist when I was in college. There were no computers in the art program at Ball State when I was there. But over time, moved my way through different roles in education when other people tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you're going to be a principal someday. And so moved from the classroom in Fort Wayne Community Schools to become an administrator in Northwest, then became the principal at DeKalb, and then eventually the principal at Homestead High School and superintendent. So my 38 years of professional career post-high school and post-college have all been in public education. And father of 4, so have had some experience with getting kids launched as well.
So Jennifer, just a little bit of your background.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit here. So I'm actually from Michigan, and what brought me to Indiana was Huntington. Well, it was college back then, but now university. So I met my husband shortly before I graduated and came to live in Allen County and started working for a place called Northeast Juvenile Correctional Facility. I don't know if you remember, that was downtown Fort Wayne, and I was a resident advisor. And I am one of those parents that found myself, okay, here we are with our first child, and I looked down at my paycheck, because it was a paper paycheck back then, and said, half of my paycheck's gonna go to childcare. Can I afford to work? And so I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna stay home. So I am actually been working part-time previously until about 8 years ago. I started working more full-time. But yeah, I'm one of those moms that decide to stay home and then kind of do some part-time work to help support the family, but at the same time, realizing that childcare was expensive back then, and we're talking 25 years ago. So, it's an issue that we still haven't addressed.
So Park, one of the things that your biggest focus areas is that I know you've worked with all 4 school systems in Allen County, plus our private schools. And then you're starting to have some traction in the homeschool space as well, talking about career education. So walk us through a little bit of what those conversations look like.
Yeah, as a convener or connector, really having relationships in those schools make a big difference. Public, private, as you say, across the spectrum. When talking with business leaders, I always say that I'm working with all 18 high schools in the county. It's important, I think, to understand that schools are there to help kids prepare for their future. I think sometimes we get our language and verbiage wrong, and we talk about planning for the future, but we can talk about planning. And some of the things I like to say is, if you talk about a kid's plan, you'll find that many of them are going to play in the NFL. But those same students often don't have the skills to play on their own varsity team. They really need to be teaching. We need to be leading our kids to preparing for the future. And when we look at our own past, very, very few of us in adulthood launched to a position we're in today with the exact plan we had while we were in high school. But as long as students and people are training, retraining, learning, and see life as a continual learning process, then we are prepared for another opportunity or a different opportunity. And so when working with our teachers, when I get a chance to work with teachers, mostly administrators and guidance counselors, it's the connective piece. What can I do for you as a school and your students that will help advance their possibilities, their training, their certification earning, or dual credit earning opportunities? And so there's a lot of conversations back and forth between universities and the high schools, and often on a very thin line between stepping too far in one direction, but trying to get all those parties to think differently than we did 15, 20, even 10 years ago for how we might work together. And what's exciting to me is there isn't a single person, whether it's in industry, business, the military, or education, who isn't interested in our community about making opportunities better for kids. Yes, there probably needs to be an ROI on the back end, oftentimes for industry, but adults often have their own families and they want the best for their own kids. So why wouldn't I want the best for your child as well? And when we start working together and start having conversations about the great possibilities for kids in Allen County or Northeast Indiana, most people see, hey, this is going to be good for our community. This is how we keep things going. This is how the community grows and flourishes. One of the things I worry about for children or for kids is the lost human capital. When we stop investing in our children, we know that there are deserts in the community of areas where kids don't have the same opportunities as maybe a different neighborhood. And so there needs to be work to create equitable opportunities. That doesn't mean the outcomes are always going to be equal, but our kids in each pocket of the community need to have as much opportunity as possible. And when we work together, those opportunities grow, and if we fertilize it a little bit, new things can happen.
And I think something that you mean by that is one of the examples we talked about early on was, if I am a poor child in a certain part of our community and, perhaps, single parent household, the mom's working a couple jobs and I don't see anyone around me that is an engineer or a doctor or an attorney. Maybe all I think that life is for me to be a fast food worker or work at a discount store versus having this child like my children, probably yours as well. We told them, you can be anything you want to be, and exploring different opportunities. My kids went to Leo, where they were, blessed to be able to have a lot of different opportunities for internships and to look at other career options. A lot of our kids don't have those opportunities because it's not the school doesn't give it to them. Life doesn't have that piece of it. So when we talk about equity, it's not, DEI stuff we're talking about. It's talking about how do we ensure that every child has the opportunity to see all the different options that are out there, and to really say, we could be, losing, the next big entrepreneur, or the next, doctor who cures cancer, whatever, who could be in our community today as a 4-year-old. And so how do we help give those children the tools to ensure that they can be a successful adult?
Yeah, a simple example of that is just increasing awareness of internship opportunities. Internships and apprenticeships often go to the kids who are best connected in the community. Their parents are connected. They've got neighbors that are connected. And that's all good. And I want those great things for those kids as well. But if we can create a deeper pool of internships and then be better at how we communicate that back to the schools and back to our school leaders and thus the kids, just think of the opportunities in those pockets of places where there are kids hidden. And that's where I talk about the human capital piece. I don't think God put us here with massive differences in talent. I think we're developed differently over time. Yes, you come to the game with different talents and abilities than I did, but we each can be developed at such a greater level than we often are.
I think something that you spend a lot of your time on is really, as part of that convener, spending a lot of time in the business community. You've met with, well over 100, 200 now, of businesses in our community who most times have never even thought about internships, right? And I think what you've done is really help educate them on the opportunity that could be there that they're missing. And then by marrying that up with the schools who may be hesitant to do these internships for, only have a few hours a day you have with these students, and the state is pretty prescriptive as to how you spend those days. So a lot of what your job is helping tear those barriers down between business and between the schools to get these kids placed in internships.
Yeah, that's true. And some of that exposure piece, we've started what we're calling workforce windows tours. As a high school principal, I never thought, and I still don't, that career days when businesses come in and put out their logo and so forth and kids walk around are as strong as when I can take a student to a location. And so we've been having lots of partnerships with local industry and business providers. Primarily in the fall, we've been working in what you would think of as traditional business and industry. But this coming spring, we're going to be doing things in the insurance industry, architecture, engineering, and taking kids out to see what's in their own community. Here's a perfect example. I could brag on a number of companies, but Continental Diamond Tool is in New Haven. So is Souder Manufacturing. They're basically in the same parking lot. Kids drive by there every day. We started taking New Haven high school students there and knew that we were doing good things the very first tour we took, because a young man in the back at the end of the day says, "Can I get a job here?" You know, these big structures, these logos mean nothing to me as a young person or even an adult. Probably the best part of my experience in the last 18 to 19 months has been getting to walk these facilities and meet people and find out, wow, this is happening here, or this is available to us. Kids have the same wow experience when they get to see things. So I've been really excited by what our industry and business partners are willing to do to bring kids in for an hour experience that's very well structured. We give a little bit of a format for it. We just had an amazing day at BF Goodrich, and they kind of got off script. And what that team at BF Goodrich did was so fantastic for those kids from Woodland High School. If we could do more of that, it would be really good for our kids. That's great.
So Jennifer, you're on the other end of the spectrum, right? So Park is focused on kind of this high school age for careers. Your focuses are little ones, right? And so every county in our region has, lack of a better term, a coordinating council, right, of early learning providers and experts. Allen County has one as well, but really was looking for leadership in that. And so when we formed Grow Allen, we went to them and said, hey, there's a great opportunity here to have a partnership. And we have this spectrum that, you know, we need kids to come into kindergarten ready to learn, right? And we need to ensure that we have quality early learning opportunities throughout all of Allen County. And so, you know, they agreed that that would be part of Grow Allen. And that's why it was a priority to bring you on board to help lead that. So tell us a little bit about the things that you work on in that space.
Yeah. So, you know, we talk about kindergarten readiness, but let's also talk about the fundamental foundation that needs to be built from 0 to 5, or I should say 0 to 4, to have them kindergarten readiness. It's essential that, you know, you talked about prenatal, all that, holistically looking at the child and making sure that they're in good quality places. And it goes back to no matter what zip code they're living in, that childcare is an essential part of, you know, what we do with Grow Allen and Ready, Set, Grow, and looking at that. But again, it's that foundational. Are their needs being met in the care that they're getting, and in childcare? Are they, you know, having those basic needs met? So then we can start looking at kindergarten readiness. Allen County has over close to 300 providers, and that means ministries, that means centers, and that also means homes. We have one of the largest home populations. And a lot of them on varying paths to quality, which is a state regulation. And so one thing that was really big as I stepped into this is to really get an idea of the landscape of early learning in Allen County and the impact that it's having. And just going through that is just building relationships, getting to know the audience, getting to know the providers who are providing that daily care, and education for those little ones. And then also, how do we build that structure of supporting organizations and community support around those providers? Because, it's the providers can only do so much. We need to collaborate and build support around them. And so Focus on 5 existed before, and then it kind of fell. COVID brought a lot of different changes and a lot of different closures. And so we're building on that, and we refocused to Ready, Set, Grow, and making sure, like you said, that every child has a fundamental quality and readiness, regardless of where they live. And so one thing that I found as in my relationship building and talking with other providers is that the essential need to collaborate amongst each other. Ministry providers were one of the first ones to say, we haven't met, together in a while. And I'd love to have that opportunity to meet the church down the road for me that's also providing the same care. And what do they do? And what kind of ideas can I learn from them? So far we've had 3 ministry provider meetings, and we've had, them come together. We had individual come from and speak about burnout, which is a huge issue in our providers. They're providing that daily care, and they're doing it for peanuts. And I mean, when you think about these childcare providers could go to work at a fast food restaurant and make more than what they're doing, and the care that's essential to our littlest population, they need to feel encouraged and supported. And so it has been one of the biggest blessings in this position, and what I've been doing is to be able to see how those collaborations have broken out into getting together outside of the meeting space and getting to know each other. We have providers, especially, that have been in doing childcare for 30 plus years. And then we have some providers who are just new to it. So can we pair them together, and be able to mentor those early care providers? Because a lot of what is going on is outside of their control. With state and with CCDF and with the state, they can't control that. But what we can do is build a community around them so they feel supported. So that is the biggest thing we're doing. We're also then going to have some, starting in 2026, we're going to also have some all provider early care and education training sessions, inviting teachers, inviting directors, and deep diving into some of these 3 core parts of strategies of Ready, Set, Grow, which is building connections, collaboration, connecting resources, and advocacy. And how do we do that in this space? And how do we be that contact point for Allen County and early learning? So it's been a blessing to really get to know individuals that I never really would have had a chance to get to know and to meet community members. But childcare is a critical issue, and there's so much going on, and it's a constantly changing landscape. And so trying to stay on top of that and hear from the voices that are being really affected.
Yeah, I know one of the things, our church has ran Early Learning Center for probably 50 years now, and it's probably one of the biggest faith-based ones in our community, and the gal who runs it is awesome. However, I know she's told me, because I chair our church board, and I've heard reports from her that we talked about CCDF, which is state voucher dollars, right, that go to low-income families, and it's one of those things that for a number of our families, childcare is not an option, because if you have one parent families, which I think 70% of our families in Southeast Fort Wayne have one parent at the home, right? So not working is not an option, and so they have to work. And, a lot of times that may be a job that, barely pays a livable wage. And so I was kind of shocked to hear from Maddie who runs our early learning center that, for an infant is $500 a week on average. For a toddler, it's $400 a week. And then for children a little bit, older than that, it could be $300 a week. So imagine if you had, 3 children, anywhere 1, 3, and 5, you could easily be paying $1,000 a week. And so, which is, could be crushing for someone who's, barely trying to make it, right? And so, those CCDF dollars are by the state and they're focused on income-based, right, that pay a certain amount. So what's going on with that that's created kind of this angst in the industry right now?
Yeah, that's a heavy topic. And CCDF is also is federally funded. And right now there's a twofold things that have been going on. They ran out of money. The state and SB1 allowed a certain amount of money, and it is not enough to cover the kids that are currently on receiving vouchers. So they had to start a wait list, and its wait list is about a year old. They started that last year at around November 2024. We're currently at a wait list of 30,000 children on, and that means that these families, their children qualified to receive a voucher, but they can't get one. And so you have like a family situation where you have a mom whose child is already receiving one voucher, had a baby, and can't get another voucher because they're on a wait list that's 30,000 deep. So it's problematic because it is affecting then how does that mom work? You can't provide childcare for just one child. You can't take your child to work. So the other issue then is foster families. So they allowed 200 vouchers for this whole state of Indiana. And, my neighbor received custody of their nephew, and they're my age. Kids are out of the house, and they receive a newborn, and they will have to pay that $400 a week. That's not something that you would think that would be in your budget as you get older, that you're going to go back to paying childcare. There's not, and then it discourages foster family, from taking in children that will need care. And that's happening. And right now at Allen County, for the wait list for Allen County, there's about 2,000 children that are on the wait list. And they're not taking anybody off the wait list. So if you have someone who leaves the state or maybe changes locations or is put off the wait or put off their CCDF and it's canceled, or they graduate, they're not replacing them with another one. So eventually you're not going to have any newborns, because usually you get on because you have a newborn. So there's centers in Allen County, and this is critical because there's centers, there's child ministries, there's homes that are looking at closing their doors. And they start by saying, you know what, we don't have, there's a childcare not too far from here that starting in January won't have infants in the room. And I can't imagine that, will not have any infants. And so they're closing that classroom, and that's how it starts. You start closing a classroom, and eventually you close the center. And what we fail to realize is that when centers closes, it's not just impacting our subsidy families. It impacts our full paying families too. And so then they're scrambling around trying to find quality care that's close to their home or close to their work. And it's critical. Businesses are also saying, you know what, employee retention. I'm losing employees because they're now saying to me, I can't afford to work. I got to stay home. One of us has to stay home. And, that choice might have been available 25 years ago when gas was like $1.25 and groceries you could do triple coupons some days, and but it's getting harder to have even one parent stay at home, and you need that good quality childcare to have those graduates from high school. It starts from the very beginning. And I say this is that the early childhood is the support beam for the workforce development. And it might have been a silent support beam. We might not have known it was there, but now we've chiseled it away and we're seeing how the impact is for workforce development. And, families are having to have tough conversations about affordability. The average cost of care in Allen County is around $15,000 for one child. I mean, it's more expensive to send your child to childcare than it is to college. So, it's something that's not, it is affecting every socioeconomic status. It's if we don't have centers, we don't have good quality childcare, then we don't have a place to put our kids that are safe. And then we leave parents to make tough decisions about where they can place their kids.
Yeah, one of the things that people who are watching this may say, why is it so expensive? Why is childcare so expensive? And part of that is the ratios that you have to have in classrooms. You talked about infants. And it makes sense, right, that you would have, part of the pass equality is that you have so many staff per child. And so obviously the younger they are, the more staff you have to have. Plus, everything has gotten more expensive over the last several years, right? And especially if you have a high quality center, a lot of those staff people have to have early education backgrounds, right? So, the days of trying to pay staff $7 an hour are over. They need to make a livable wage as well. And so you look at that and, they can't make what, our schools make. And so it is that middle ground between what does that look like? And that adds to the cost. One of the things that we're trying to do to address that is how do we have the private sector, i.e. employers, be part of the solution, right? So something that we're beta testing right now in Allen County is what's called a tri-share model, right? We have a pool of state dollars that we're leveraging 2-to-1 between we think that, families should have some skin in the game, right? But then the employer needs to have skin in the game as well. If they want, Sally or Sam to stay as an employee, they need to put something in too. So that $300 a week, let's say the tri-share might split that into 3, which, is something we're baiting as a potential solution. And if it works here, then it could be something statewide. It's a way to take those dollars and really leverage them, further, because, it's one thing that, you mentioned before, if, Sally can't afford to work anymore and she's the only parent in the household and stays home, what happens then? Well, what happens then is, through, Medicaid and through, a bunch of other federal programs, we're all paying that cost, where it is cheaper if families are working. So how do we stick that needle? So you got a tough job, for sure.
It is. And the landscape's always changing, and, part of what we're doing with collaborating with providers is when we support our providers and when we support our early care educators, we support the families that they serve. We support the children that they serve. And it's a very hard job for what they're doing. They wear a lot of hats. And so if, bringing them together, collaborating, creating a shared community of voices that, how can we here in Allen County, effectively make a change? And it's human capital. It's bringing people together. It's collaboration. At the same time, we need the families need to have that direct impact. And TriShare does that. It's a great opportunity for families to feel like, I went from $300 a week to $100 a week. And, and then that savings, giving them the opportunity to, use it in other ways, and it benefits our community.
So Park, not leaving you out of this. So a big piece of what you do is, talking to those businesses that have those high paying jobs. And by letting our young people know those are out there, and by kind of marrying those two up, our goal is, hopefully getting these young people, focused career wise, so that they're prepared to when they get to the stage of life that Jennifer is talking about, they have a plan, right? So some of the conversations you have with employers are about what when it comes to getting our young people thinking career wise?
I think many of our employers are looking for just people, not necessarily young people. However, they know that the sooner they are able to network with a kid in high school, the more likely that that student is going to matriculate into their work environment, because they now know something new. One of the phrases, again, I use often is kids understand sandwich shops and retail. Well, if it doesn't fit into one of those two things, it's just a logo on the street. And when a product hits the market, students don't understand often how many people it is that stand behind that product. Oh, there must be a guy who built that. Yes, but then there's all these other jobs behind that, whether it's accounting or HR and multiple other things in marketing. The more we can show students the things that it takes to make a community or build an economy, the better they understand what their options are. And again, for most kids, that comes down to just exposure.
Yeah, I know something that Tom Kelly is a dear friend, and one of the things he says is, looking at the mechanics at Kelly Automotive, and that, he's a big proponent of, he's on our board for Grow Allen, and has talked about young people come through and never think about being a mechanic in one of his shops. And these are high paying, good jobs that when you get them, you keep them, right? And these are the kind of jobs that you can support a family on. And he always talks about, when he talks to these young people, they never imagine that they can make that kind of money. They never imagine, what does health insurance look like? I can afford a car. What's a 401k? So it's part of that, having our employers matched up with our young people to help them understand, what that is. What does it look like, again, to lead a life that you love what you do, you're trained for what you do, and you can successfully adult.
And we're starting to see more. Tom's a good example. So is Local 166. We're starting to see leaders in our community say, how can I be involved with that? Stoops Freightliner out in New Haven is going to start taking kids in a model similar to what Kelly Automotive does. McMahon Best One Tire is going to do the same thing. Now, that seems like all the same kind of business. But once they start to talk with each other, business leaders see, hey, that's something I can get involved in. And I think in the next year, you're going to see something very big happen in advanced manufacturing. So there's some momentum that's created by success. Small successes, when fertilized, become bigger fields, and that's what we're really working on.
Well, and these type of things are critical, because people may be asking as they're watching this, or Ron, why is you as a county commissioner care about this? Why should I, watching this at home, care about this? This is something that affects all of us. Because, I did this job. I get up every day with one goal: to make us the most thriving, vibrant county in the state of Indiana. And a key piece of that is having our young people, keeping them, and helping them lead lives of success that make our community grow. Today I saw a statistic that talked about we're about 400,000 people in Allen County right now. And if you look at a 2 to 3% growth rate a year, which is not unrealistic, we could be at 500,000, in the next 10 years. And I mean, that is significant. And so when, a number of people watching this may recall that, we landed Bombardier, we announced that about a month or so ago, which these are the kind of jobs you want in your community. I mean, they are a manufacturer of private jets. And, they are putting their service center here. The initial goal is 100 employees, but that could grow up to 300. Average wage, close to 100,000 a year. This is the jobs that you want in your community. And, their biggest question to us was, what kind of training programs do we have in place? How are we going to help train a workforce that is focused on, these are mechanics that are focused on, repairing these planes from around the world. And I know this was one that our schools were a big piece of that, East Allen, Fort Wayne Community, Ivy Tech, to say, you know what, we have the workforce for you that as you grow here, we're going to have a pipeline of talent for you. And that's something that, as you're working with our schools, that we're helping put together.
And we're uniquely placed with a large number of universities, small and large, within 35 minutes of here. And that's one of the reasons we're growing. You look at Indiana Tech that's right downtown. It's a gem that many people don't know about. Yet they fill a need that IU or Purdue or USF or Trine and all of the other schools, Manchester, Huntington, et cetera, don't fill. But each one of those has a niche that is helping build up our entire community.
Right. Well, and having to attract these type of jobs and retain them, we have to have quality early learning, right? And we also have to have, a quality K through 12 system. I mean, those are some of the biggest things that site selectors look at, that people look at when they want to move here. They're looking for quality of place. And these are two things that are part of quality of place, as well as, our parks, our roads, how safe is my community. Those are all part of that. So ensuring that we are all kind of rowing in the same direction, both with a strong, public school system, private school system, that we have lots of early learning options, whether that's faith-based or non-faith-based, that we have those options for families who want to or have to look at those options that are there. And I know that's something that you're both, focused on every day. So that's kind of a wrap up as we kind of finish this out. What are some big things that you guys are working on in the future, or success? What does that look like, for you? So Jennifer, I might start with you first, of big things you're working on and what, kind of you look at as success markers in the future.
I think the big thing right now that we're working on is that all provider gathering that we're going to have in December. We're going to have Sam Sneidman from the United Way of Central Indiana come and speak on advocacy. We're going to have Hoosier Milestones there. We have about 35 early care and educators signed up. We really want to bring this group together. We really want them to create this one voice, the shared community, that they know that they're being valued and appreciated in what they do. Because if we lose any more childcare providers, then, it affects our businesses, it affects our workforce. Like you said, you need to, when you bring these businesses in, they need to know that there's good quality childcare there. And so engaging with our educators and making sure that they feel supported, that, we really strive for Ready, Set, Grow to be that hub, for Allen County, that, when that first point of contact, when you're thinking of where do I go about early learning, where do I go about data, where do I go, and understand, then it would be Ready, Set, Grow. And so, those are some of the goals. They're lofty. But it's critical that we build those relationships with our providers so we can understand their voice and what they're going through, and how, through convening or innovative ideas, can we keep them going.
Park? We have a number of things. Growing emphasis has become what we're calling the Grow Allen Pathway Partners Fund. We've got partners now stepping forward to help pay for student PPE, tools, and whatnot as they have internships. That's become necessary as we push more kids out into internships, and the state has kind of limited what we used to be called, or still is called, career scholarship accounts. So I'm excited about that. The recent convenings we've had for Advanced Manufacturing Academy, there's growing interest, and we've got new partners coming forward who's saying, hey, I want to be a part of that. I want to talk to you about that. So that's important and exciting. And then, of course, continuing to develop our schools, and our businesses are all going to be reached in the next 40 days about internship opportunities for kids. The businesses will be given an opportunity to let schools know, and we're going to try to streamline that a little bit more than last year, more of a database than it was a year ago, so that as kids need opportunities, they'll be able to match those to kids a little bit easier. And then continue to talk with business leaders, because the more, it's really amazing to me how word of mouth works. And one of the most important contacts I've had recently is with Harris Boats. I don't have that contact, but 2 other people opened doors for me there. And now that team is very interested in what's going on. So continue to knock on doors and talk with people, and then let those conversations say, hey, you need to know somebody else. Those things are all exciting to me.
So if someone wants to learn more about Grow Allen and the work that you and Jennifer are doing, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can always hit us on the web. All of our information is at growallen.com, and it's a simple website, but you can find Jennifer and my information there, and email us. I live on email, so hit me with an email and I'll be back with you probably within an hour or less.
All right. So I'm thankful to have both of you here today. Thank you very much. This really is the kind of cutting edge of education discussions and early learning in the state of Indiana. I know I've talked with the governor a couple of times about this, with various legislators, and they're really looking at Allen County right now for a number of the solutions for a number of these things that are more private sector, business led, for what those solutions may look like. So thankful for both of you. Thankful for you joining us today. Hopefully you learned something new today, and we'd encourage you, if you want to learn more, go to Grow Allen's website. Thank you for viewing episode 7 of Talking with Turpin, and we look forward to talking to you soon.